Professor Chris Landsberg, Chair of the African Diplomacy and Foreign Policy at the University of Johannesburg, now joins us for a conversation. A very good evening to you. Prof, thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start here. I mean, it didn't seem, from where I was looking that, Israel was disputing any of the killings, really. But what they were saying is that, this was self-defense against Hamas and that they lacked intent to kill civilians. What did you make of, the defense put forward by Israel's council legal team today?
I suppose you and I should also try and have an opportunity, to talk about what were the strengths and the weaknesses of South Africa's case yesterday. It was methodical and so. What is fascinating about what Israel did today? They steered clear of the bombings, the carnage, the devastation caused to people. Quite frankly, signs of ethnic cleansing, pushing the Palestinians to the fringes of an already overcrowded Gaza Strip, in the hope, frankly, that Egypt and Jordan in particular will take them up as refugees. That's more than genocide, but of course they had to confine themselves to genocide. To sum it up, Flo, for you in a nutshell, and I'm borrowing this phrase from the Citizen newspaper today, I think they put it eloquently. Israel decided to play the man and not the ball. They tried to punch holes into, South Africa's institutional acumen, whether we were ready to receive the démarche, and so on. And predictably, finally, they focused on the self-defense as if the killing of 1,300 people constituted genocide. I should just remind you about one thing. Prior to the 7th of October, at least 137 Palestinians were killed. So there have always been a conflict in Palestine and between Palestine and Israel. But of course, the 7th was a fork in the road.
Yeah, and speaking on their take of South Africa's argument as the applicant in this case, I really want to come to the issue of jurisdiction, because it seems that they kind of stayed on this issue. Their counsel, in particular, I don't know if they go by advocate in Israel, but I'll say Advocate Shaw for lack of a better word, raised the issue of jurisdiction, and I think that he was put forward to discuss that more than anything, more than anyone else. And one would have thought that the issue of jurisdiction was not necessarily in dispute, in that both countries are signatories to the genocide convention, but they really came forward with this issue of jurisdiction, saying that certain things were not done pre coming to the ICJ when it comes to for example, the fact that the applicant was supposed to do certain things in terms of speaking to Israel first and kind of exhaust all remedies first before approaching the ICJ. What did you think of that particular sort of argument in relation to the issue of jurisdiction? And might I say, because you raised the issue that we must talk about how South Africa did yesterday, but why did South Africa not dwell a lot on the issue of jurisdiction in anticipation of Israel using it as a leg of defense?
Sure. So Flo, let's do four things. Israel effectively tried to base their case predictably on four issues. Jurisdiction was the first and foremost one.
Yeah.
So I think you're picking on a very important one. Then the dispute, whether there is a dispute between South Africa and Israel. That's a very interesting one. And what Israel was trying to do there was to say, but South Africa, you and I are not in conflict. Why did you bring me to the squad? Why did you pick up the issue on behalf of Hamas? Which brings us to the third and related point. You are a stooge for Hamas. You are the legal entity of Hamas, and then, of course, self-defense of the 7th of October. Let's come to your point of jurisdiction. And there was a scholar, and it's a pity I should have really remembered his name because he put it absolutely brilliantly. By Advocate Shaw today saying, we tried to get hold of South Africa. We tried to talk to them. And then he even threw in that thing which is now becoming very common when people criticize South Africa, you know, that Durko is disorganized, Pretoria is disorganized, that on the 27th, we sent somebody to the union buildings just to find that the union buildings was closed. Let me tell you what's significant about that, Flo. You might think it's just about countries trying to make contact with each other. The irony of what the scholar made is that by Advocate Shaw saying that Israel was trying to make contact with South Africa, that in and of itself constitutes a recognition that there was a dispute, a difference of opinion, some tensions between us, and I would like to talk to you.
Yeah.
And he says on that one, Israel is on shaky ground. The fact that they did not respond to the démarche in the manner in which Professor John Duggar tried to portray it,
yeah,
does not refute the fact or mitigate the fact that Israel try and admit that they tried to get in contact with a country that they have a dispute about. Just one final thing on this. Israel has been rubbishing this court case. And I'm saying to you that's significant for two reasons. They might not accept the outcome of this together with the United States because this will ultimately go to the United Nations. The end result, Israel, but America in particular, will lose so much legitimacy because if there's one thing South Africa has achieved, it has achieved the unthinkable of being the only and first country to put such a bold matter on the agenda of the ICJ against a country that is regarded as an untouchable country. No longer are there untouchable countries post this ICJ case of South Africa.
Yeah, I think you've answered the question of jurisdiction very well, so we appreciate that. But let's come to this issue of intent. And what was said was that, you know, for it to qualify as genocide, and they used the Genocide Convention itself and the definition that is put there of what actually intent is and what's required for it to then become an issue of genocide and genocidal acts. And they said on their part, you know, there was no case of intent and that, you know, the intention has to be proved. But we all know that, you know, intention doesn't necessarily have to be one party saying, OK, now we're actually performing a genocide. It can be an omission, a commission on the part of those that are perpetrating the genocide. And of course, we say allegedly in this case. Do you believe that there was a failure on the part of South Africa or South Africa's legal team to prove that, in fact, there was that issue of intent and that, you know, there was intention from Israel to commit a genocide?
So if the criticism comes, you'll have to take the blame for this one, because I think you're really hammering on a nail that's very important. One of the points I made throughout the day in my interviews, and I think Israel drove that point home, I think South Africa could have been much more meticulous and methodical on this issue. So what did we see South Africa do? South Africa did an absolutely brilliant job in giving us the litany of prominent key decision makers at the highest levels of Israel, including President Herzog, Prime Minister Netanyahu, the Iron Man, obsessed with warfare, the Minister of Defense, and so the list goes on. I think what South Africa should have done and spent a bit more time on, and Advocate Shaw said it, you list these things that were said by all these actors, including things said by soldiers, but you did not prove that when Netanyahu said something about wiping out all Israeli men, or the Minister of Defense, this is a key one, saying there shall be no food, water, infrastructure for them. What South Africa should have done better is to take those statements and link them to actual actions as executed by the armed forces of the IDF. For example, let's take the one of water. The Minister of Defense says we're going to deprive them of water. Then when the armed forces then go and destroy the water infrastructure of Palestine and of Gaza, they should have done that better. In fact, they used much more graphic evidence than we did. And I just think that there is a link that South Africa now finds itself saying maybe we assume that the link will be automatically made. Let me give you some good news from a South African point of view, and I'll do the same for Israel. The judge president was very, very clear. I mean, I listened to those words right towards the end, and she repeated it 3 times. I need all of you to be around in the vicinity during the course of the next 2 weeks until the 6th of February, when we give the preliminary findings and the preliminary judgment. Because we may have a lot of questions for all of you. And this may be very well be the opportunity for South Africa to go and dot the I's and cross the T's and make those links and make a stronger case. But that South Africa made a methodical case is good. I hate to say it to you, Israel was strong in saying that you have a country on the southern tip of Africa relying almost on hearsay, television, information, as opposed to being on the ground. And there's one question that I have, finally, Flo, on this point.
Sorry, I'm going to have to rush you on that point. I'm going to have to rush you on that point.
Why didn't we use more legal expertise from the region?
You're right.
I was just puzzled by it.
All right. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really wish we had more time to chat there. Professor Chris Landsberg is the Chair of African Diplomacy and Foreign Policy at the University of Johannesburg.